Nick Wright must love the Baltimore Ravens because he cannot stop talking about them. We talk about Nick Wright freaking out on the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Nnamdi Madubuike expressing some frustration and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Wednesday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Are free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast 5 days a week, plus more on Locked On Ravens. We have the Locked On Ravens show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also sometimes have bonus episodes on the weekends. We go live after every Ravens game and every piece of Ravens big news. Plus, the Ravens Squad show now is on Locked On Ravens. It's live on Mondays and Thursdays. And Sam Njoku, who is with me here today, is a part of that show alongside Qadry Ismail, former Ravens receiver and Super Bowl champion as well. Want to tell you first, today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, yes, you're with me today. It is Sam Njoku of Ravens Talk Podcast and the Locked On Ravens Squad show. Sam, we get practice today. We're talking about practice. The vets reported yesterday. We got to hear from some of the Ravens players to talk about what they had to say. But now is the time, young guys stepping up, hopefully making impacts in training camp, making names for themselves, maybe even earning some roster spots. And of course, it's always nice to see Lamar Jackson and the Stars back in uniform and practicing. I mean, football, it is in the air. And I saw you were celebrating. Your timeline was all football. And I am right there with you. It is awesome to see that now.
It has been a long road, sir. It's been a long road since February. We've been on this show week in and week out talking Ravens football. Finally, these guys are at the facility getting ready for their first practice today. I'm excited. I mean, football all over my timeline. As you saw on social media, I was celebrating it. It's great to have football back. No more hypotheticals. Time to get started with some practice and get ready for the season.
Yeah, and if you're watching this after the Ravens have practiced on Wednesday, of course, we'll have all the practice updates and coverage for you on Locked On Ravens, talking about who did well, who didn't. It's going to be really exciting. And this is the best time of the offseason for me. I love the speculation. I love talking about, who potentially can be added, who the Ravens can draft. Like, all those are great. But to actually have football back, it's a whole different feeling. So Ravens, they enter a really important training camp for them. We talked about that on Monday on the Locked On Ravens Squad show. And again, if you want to tune into that, we'll have it again tomorrow, live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But here on the show today, we'll talk about Ronnie Stanley hinting at a bit of a Daniel Faalele breakout and talk about what expectations are for Faalele this season. We'll also talk about Nnamdi Madubuike revealing some frustration about last season and how he is combating that this year. But in the first part of the show, Sam, the Ravens' biggest fan, Mr. Nick Wright, just cannot stop talking about this team. I mean, he's all over the place. He's doing his thing. And, Lamar Jackson's biggest fan. Yeah, not. But even still, he is trying to, I think, butter some people up to get on the Ravens hate train and set Lamar Jackson up, in my opinion. At least he's trying to, and I'll explain what I mean by that. But first of all, he freaked out on the Ravens roster. Essentially, he said, why are the Ravens getting so much respect? Why is their roster getting so much respect? And these comments to me, honestly, are wild. So I want to start off with the quote that's getting all the attention right now, and then we'll move on to the other part of it. Nick Wright cannot believe that people are saying the Ravens have the best roster in the NFL. He said, quote, I think it's ridiculous. I don't think they had the best roster last year, and the roster probably got marginally just a touch worse than last year. And I'm just going to stop it right there. This is one of the craziest things I've heard in the past couple of months. Even if you put on the antiest of anti-purple glasses, you cannot sit here and tell me that the Ravens roster from last year is at all worse than last season. You are replacing, and someone actually responded to this on social media. Shout out to Stone. He said, let me get this straight. The Ravens replaced Brandon Stevens, Marcus Williams, and Nelson Aguilar with DeAndre Hopkins, Malaki Starks, and Jaire Alexander, while also adding Mike Green and company, but they got worse. I cannot. There are upgrades all across the board here. I don't understand. Is there any argument, Sam? That to me, there's none that says the Ravens roster is worse. I just think that Nick Wright does not like the Ravens, and he tried to make a point, and honestly, it did not land at all.
Yeah, I think he might be scared. Maybe we all know Nick Wright's a Chiefs fan, and we know that the biggest obstacle for the Chiefs is most likely going to be the Baltimore Ravens. And yeah, I try to put myself in the shoes of someone whose argument I disagree with. I just can't fathom there being a situation or a semblance of an outcome where this Ravens roster is worse than last year. I mean, and Stone did a good job of mentioning that the upgrade, the cornerback position with Jaire Alexander, moving away from Brandon Stevens. You get Malaki Starks to take over for Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson. And you got DeAndre Hopkins taking over the third receiver spot from Dante. It just doesn't make much sense. It's a crazy notion to me to consider this team to be anything but tops in the league. I know Nick Wright's scared. I know Nick Wright's nervous. Maybe he's trying to take over for Acho and the sound waves of poor takes. I don't know. But it's just insane. If I'm Nick Wright, I'm pretty sure he regrets saying what he said because there's no justification for it. That's why this team is hyped the way it is. And that's why fans like Nick Wright of those Kansas City Chiefs or fans of the Bills are very nervous entering the season because they know without a shadow of a doubt that the Ravens, if healthy, have the best roster in the AFC and most likely the National Football League.
And just reading the rest of Nick Wright's comments from this segment on First Things First, he said their biggest addition is DeAndre Hopkins. And Chris Broussard said, well, Jaire Alexander. And Nick Wright said, defensively, Jaire Alexander, he said he was looking more at offense. I just think he forgot that they signed Jaire Alexander. Yeah. And he said, quote, I don't think to me he's a massive addition. I think the last couple of years he hasn't been a great player. I think he's still a good player, but I don't think he's been a great player. Baltimore last year, even coming on strong at the end of the season, barely a top 10 scoring defense and number 31 pass defense. While Justin Tucker last year wasn't the Justin Tucker of old, he's probably more reliable than a 6th round rookie. This is just Sam, it's ignoring all context. Like if you want to put this generally, sure, the Ravens defense wasn't great last year from a whole perspective because the first half of their season pass defense wise was terrible. Baltimore has a great roster and you can't just kind of pick and choose what you want to talk about.
Not at all. And for fans who say, well, why are we talking about the national media? We talk about Nick Wright all the time. His take doesn't count. The narrative is out there. And when you build narratives, it causes, people to not vote for Lamar Jackson when he probably should be MVP, not vote for Derrick Henry when he had a pretty good shot at being Offensive Player of the Year. So narratives like this in the national scale do matter in some regards. Of course, the take is ridiculous, but stuff like this gains steam sometimes. You got other people thinking like this and talking like this. You got to shut it down. And I, for one, will make the effort to shut down this criticism. This roster is 100% better than it was last year. This roster will compete for a championship if healthy. And teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Bills didn't improve as much as the Ravens did. And that's why we're seeing the hype around this roster. Yeah, their defense was poor last year, but upgrading the cornerback position isn't nothing to sneeze at. I mean, tell me the difference between Brandon Stevens and Jaire isn't exceptional. It is a huge upgrade in that boundary corner position, something that the Ravens were unable to look at that season. I know the Ravens made upgrades by moving Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson out of their safety position, but they had to keep Brandon Stevens in there for whatever reason they had, and that had to be resolved this offseason, and it has been with Jaire Alexander and Chidobe Awuzie. It's a great roster, and you could talk about can they get it done in the postseason? Sure, that's a conversation we can have. But on paper, roster for roster, bar for bar, this roster matches up with any roster in the National Football League, bar none.
And that's why I bring up these takes and talk about them on the show. I'm with you, Sam. It's like I don't want these things to go unchecked. Like if there are things that are just not true about the Ravens, or there are these conversations, and they do bring up good conversation points. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. I'm not saying that, but when there's clearly something in front of you that like, hey, here are the facts, or here's what's happening, and then you go against that, and it's whether it's purposeful hate or whatever, I'm going to stick up for whoever is on the wrong side of that. And in this situation, covering the Ravens and Lamar Jackson with all the scrutiny he faces, and apparently now the Ravens roster here, I'm going to be one to bring it up and talk about it and have conversations about it. But Nick Wright said also, and this is where I think he sets up Lamar for a lot of scrutiny and criticism. He said, quote, I think they have a downright below average receiving core. I might have them 5th or 6th. To say that this that they're the best roster, I think is crazy. I agree with you on Philly. I think Kansas City is better. I think Buffalo is better. But then he also said, if this is true that the Ravens have the best roster, it puts even more pressure on Lamar if he really does have the best team in the league. So Nick Wright is saying, hey, if it's true, then guess what? If they lose, go all out on Lamar Jackson and puts all the pressure on Lamar. But, if Lamar does this, his roster is too good. But if he doesn't, it's all Lamar's fault. It's just Lamar can't win. It's just, this is the conversation. Lamar can't win. Nick Wright this is a pretty I've seen less obvious attempts to do this. I think this is a pretty obvious attempt here from Nick Wright to set Lamar Jackson up for scrutiny and criticism, which I think is quite frankly ridiculous.
The Kansas City Chiefs are not a better roster than the Ravens. I'm sorry for those watching on YouTube. If you saw my face, that was just a ridiculous take. I mean, they have holes throughout their roster, especially on the offensive line. So I don't want to hear that. But you make a great point. I mean, which one is it? Do the Ravens have a bad roster and Lamar Jackson has to lift them up, or do the Ravens have a great roster and the pressure is on Lamar Jackson? So you can't have it both ways, Nick. Pick one. But I agree with you. A lot of pressure you're trying to put on Lamar Jackson, that scrutiny. If you truly believe that this roster isn't the 5th or 6th best in the league, let alone the best, then you can't put that on Lamar Jackson to get it up there. But I do agree with the fact that, Lamar Jackson has pressure on him to build a championship run with this roster, and that pressure is also on John Harbaugh, something we talked about on the Raven Squad show. So I get that notion of that, but you can't say that while also knocking the Ravens roster for not being the best in football. You can't have it both ways. I think this Ravens roster is one of the best, and I think Lamar Jackson will rise to the occasion and get the job done this year.
Yeah, it is. Look, I'm just going to prepare everybody. This is going to be another season of these conversations. And of course, I will do my best to take up and defend against them. And Sam, I know you are right there with me. We can do it together. So we'll have all those conversations, hopefully not as many, but I'm just, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, I guess is what we're going to go with that there. But coming up in the second part of the show, we had some Ravens players talk to the media on Tuesday. Nnamdi Madubuike revealed some frustration with last season. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show was brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. And I've been really focused on saving. Is something I've been wanting to do. It's something I am now doing. And that's a goal that I've been getting serious about. Now, Monarch makes it really easy for me because everything is all in one place. Sometimes I have to go over here. I have to go over there. Monarch's layout and everything they have right there is a game changer for me. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. And the show is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Back on Locked On Ravens with Sam Njoku. I am Kevin Oestreicher talking Ravens football. We got practice today. Football's in the air. The Ravens are hoping to win a Super Bowl this year. Everything is right in the world. Of course, it'll all be perfect in the world when the Ravens are back playing regular season football. But Sam, we can live with just the Ravens being at training camp for now. Everybody is there. We're excited for that. But Nnamdi Madubuike talked to the media yesterday, and I thought he provided some interesting insight. And actually, he talked about some things that you and I have talked about, and it's been honestly a conversation throughout the Ravens' social media platforms and waves about how Nnamdi Madubuike was defended last season. And he was one of the most double-teamed interior defensive linemen in the league last year, obviously after his breakout 2023 season. And he said, quote, yes, I definitely had a lot of double teams last year. It freed up a bunch of guys, and it was frustrating at times, but I made an emphasis this offseason to find ways to split the double teams, get stronger in the weight room and stuff like that. And I even wanted to add a little bit more weight because I know they're going to be sliding. It's a good thing, and I appreciate it, but I definitely want to keep being productive and being the player that I know I can be. And this is the ultimate team-first mentality here from Nnamdi Madubuike. But, hey, you know what? My double teams freed up other people to go do their thing. But I also thought it was cool of him to kind of admit, hey, it was frustrating for me. And like, I want to be able to combat that more this season so that when I do see those double teams, I'm able not only just to free my teammates up, but I'm able to split those or get around them and help my team out a little bit more. Not that Nnamdi Madubuike was bad last year. It's just, it was a little bit of a downturn from what we'd seen in 2023. So, Sam, what do you make of Nnamdi Madubuike's comments? Because I know this is something you've talked about extensively a lot of the time, whether it be social media or just on other shows.
I'm glad he has taken the steps in the offseason. I'm always curious what players are doing in the offseason to improve upon themselves and what their mindset is heading into that training that they go through. So, yeah, it's good to know that he understood that those double teams are occurring and that you can't just rest on the laurels that, yes, me taking double teams may not, show on the stat sheet, but it does free up, Kavanaugh and Odafe Owe to get those sacks on one-on-one matchups on the outside. So I get that notion, but I'm glad that he also has that notion that, hey, I'm taking these double teams. I need to learn how to split these double teams, get to the quarterback, and still be a force in the pass rush. On the interior, it's very difficult for quarterbacks to handle interior pass rush. That's why Aaron Donald's touted as one of the best. Chris Jones, the likes of that. If Nnamdi Madubuike wants to be in that conversation, he needs to be able to handle these double teams and sometimes even triple teams and still be able to get after the quarterback and also stop the run. So that is the next step in his evolution as an interior lineman. Look, getting bulky, getting your technique down, that's going to be huge for Nnamdi Madubuike as he makes that next step. So it's good to see that he's, owned that, got a little bit of bulk, understood the assignment ahead of him, and hopefully he's ready to rock and roll this season.
I think when everybody, at least recently, has talked about, oh man, Ravens player is adding on some weight, people look at Odafe Owe, 15 to 20 pounds. Whoa, that's it. Nnamdi Madubuike was not quite to that level. He said that he wanted to add about, 5 to 8 pounds. He said that his ideal target playing weight would be between 290 and 300 pounds. He said last year he was a little bit lighter, maybe around 285 or 290, but he thinks that even adding those 5 to 8 pounds right in that range is going to make a difference for him. And he talked about the successes that he found during the 2024 season. And he said that production is for everybody, but himself being a tenacious force. And that's how he sees himself as a player. And the line that I love from him here was, quote, when you're a good player, people are going to scheme against you and try to stop you. It's going to free up other guys, but you still want to play. You still want to ball. You still want to eat. So he clearly is motivated. Again, he understands that teams are going to be game planning for him and, making sure that he can't make an impact on the game. His mindset is, hey, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go out there and you're going to try to stop me. No, you're not. I'm not going to be stopped. So what do you think is the next step for Nnamdi this season, Sam, to be able to break out? He talked about beating the slides and making sure that he's ready to combat that. But what do you want to see from him in particular this season?
I think everything you mentioned is right on the nose. He needs to get stronger. He needs to be able to break through those slides and break through that guard center combo to get to the quarterback. That's pretty much the name of the game for him right now. Travis Jones being healthy helps him a ton. It definitely limits the amount of double teams they can give to just Madubuike, because Travis Jones also is a guy you don't want to have on one-on-one with your guard or center, because he's just going to break through. Same with Peebles, even though he's a rookie, you see that in him. So getting those guys healthy, getting a nice rotation in the interior of that defensive line will help him out a ton. But as far as him being able to be that guy himself, to get after the quarterback, he needs to get stronger. He needs to be able to, power through those double teams and get after him. Something that, I think he has. I mean, just 8 pounds is a huge difference, but also just being stronger, getting in the weight room, all of that stuff goes into it. So I'm not too worried about the weight. If he thinks that weight's going to help him get better, go for it. But I think just having the mindset of, hey, I need to work on getting those double teams down. If he has a trainer that have him, work and get that, acumen together for him, then I'm ready for it. So I think this is going to be a big season for him. We'll see what happens and when it all goes down. But Travis Jones, I think, is also going to be a huge reason why Madubuike has any success this season.
Yeah, and not only on the field for Nnamdi, Sam, but I also think for him as a leader, it's going to be a big year for him. He talked about that. He was asked about it. Obviously, we know the leaders in that room, at least the veteran leaders, were Brent Urban and Michael Pierce. Both of those players are no longer with the team. So now Nnamdi Madubuike, I believe him and Broderick Washington are now the longest tenured defensive linemen in that defensive line room. Obviously, John Jenkins is the veteran, but he obviously is in his first year with the team. So Nnamdi obviously has been there. He's done that. And when asked about his leadership role, how it's evolved with Michael Pierce and Brent Urban not on the team anymore, he said, quote, "I saw myself as a leader last year as well. I was breaking the team down before games, getting everybody ready to go. Mike and Herb were great vets for us and were leaders. I wouldn't say it's me being stepped up, but me growing more in a role as a leader." And so, again, I think when people look at leaders sometimes, Sam, it has to be, you have to be a 10-year vet to truly be like, or an 8-year vet to truly do that. I think, to me, and the wide receiver position, you saw it with like Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman last season. Those guys wanted to step up more as leaders. Nnamdi Madubuike has been around the block. He's obviously an extremely talented player and someone who's one of the best at his positional group. He can take a guy like Aeneas Peoples under his wing and make sure that, he gets right. Because, again, Aeneas Peoples is not going to be this like hulking run-stopping force. He excels as a pass rusher. I think that he can learn a lot from a guy like Nnamdi Madubuike. And in that room, it's about him challenging everybody, getting everybody right, and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to work with you guys, right? We're a team. And I feel like not only Nnamdi Madubuike, but the rest of the team has that mindset as well. But, everybody talks about, Nnamdi's going to be a lot better on the field this season. Hopefully more sacks, hopefully more stats. But it's such a holistic experience for these guys, both on and off the field. And I'm excited to see how holy Nnamdi Madubuike can be this year.
Yeah, and Ravens fans are accustomed probably to a different style of leadership. We always think about Ray Lewis being the boisterous guy coming out the locker room, being a gladiator. But there's different types of leadership. And I think that holding yourself accountable and holding your teammates accountable is a big part of leadership. Being good on the football field, obviously, you can't be much of a leader if you're not, performing out there. But, just being able to have guys gravitate towards you as well as holding yourself and your teammates accountable makes you a leader. That's why you have guys like Calvin Noy stepping up, even though, Lamar doesn't really have that boisterous mentality. He's a guy that expects a lot of his teammates, especially more recently. So he's a leader. And Madubuike can be that guy, especially because, as you mentioned, he's kind of the vet now in that position group. Him and Broderick, it is crazy how time flies. You had Brent Urban. I wish Brent Urban came back, by the way, but I understand. But, Michael Pierce retiring, all of that stuff. So it's the changing of the guard. But I think he does have that mentality. He has that in him to be that leader, and they're going to need it as they push forward towards the season.
Yeah, and just you're talking about a lot of things with Nnamdi Madubuike and the leadership styles. When you have that like Ray Lewis, Roquan Smith type of leader, and it is very much, first of all, it's not quiet leadership, but second of all, it gets a ton of attention. It gets a ton of attention. Whereas the stuff behind the scenes or the more quiet mini huddles, that doesn't always get the attention. And so for a guy like Nnamdi Madubuike to break down the huddle and be that vocal leader and plus a veteran mentor leader, that's really important. And he actually was asked about Travis Jones breaking down the huddle during minicamp. And this kind of talks about and honestly kind of encapsulates how Nnamdi Madubuike is as a leader. He said, quote, he did pretty good. That's probably his first or second time breaking down the huddle. So he made a little stutter here and there, but that's how I was too. So I was like, bro, don't worry about it. You'll grow into that role and just let yourself blossom over time and you'll get right. So it's about encouragement. It's about empowerment. And I think that for this Ravens team, we all know, Sam, the on-the-field results are important, but how you get those on-field results, some of it has to do with the off-field chemistry and the leaders you have in that room and no drama. Now, the Ravens had drama last season, so I think they still were able to make the playoffs with it, but hopefully we get a lot less of that this year and just a lot more straight to business football. Coming up in the final part of the show, Ronnie Stanley, he hinted at a potential Daniel Faalele breakout and talked a little bit about what Faalele's work has been this offseason. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football's back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On Ravens are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years and love how smooth the draft day experience is, from the draft board to player analysis. Yahoo Fantasy, they have it all, and it is absolutely incredible. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. Stay tuned to get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Sam Njoku still rocking out with you here as Ravens training camp is official. I can't stop saying it, Sam. It just feels so good to say that Ravens training camp is officially back. So I want to relish the moment. I want to bask in it before we get to the preseason, the regular season, and just continuing to check off those boxes. Now, Ronnie Stanley was another player that spoke to the media yesterday. He talked a lot about, Lamar Jackson and wanting to win a Super Bowl for Lamar, bringing it back to Baltimore. He talked about, what he envisions for the team this season, Super Bowl aspirations in general. But he was also asked about some of his teammates, Daniel Faalele being one of them. We know that the guard positions in Baltimore right now are probably the most worried about positions on the roster right now, considering how important it is. It's obviously imperative to be able to protect your quarterback. Now, of course, Lamar Jackson, as we talked about, Sam, is the best in the world at creating something out of nothing and, making the offensive line sometimes look better than it is. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to have good guard play. You want to have good guard play. So Faalele apparently has been working very hard this offseason, and Ronnie Stanley talked and spoke to that. He said, quote, Daniel's taken a really tough approach on himself this offseason. He's been working his butt off every day. He's been pushing himself, and I've been very proud of how far he has gone. There have also been clips on social media that are circulating of Faalele working out. Honestly, he looks lean compared to, where he has been. I mean, you can tell the work he's been putting in. I think it's exciting, Sam. There's still worry, right? I'm still kind of worried, like, how is this going to work? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? I don't want to just sit here and write off Daniel Faalele and say, oh, there's no way he's going to be good. And by the way, that is Pro Bowler Daniel Faalele to everybody who is watching and listening to the show. But still, it does worry me a little bit, but at least he's putting in the work. And while guys do work in silence sometimes, I think the best encapsulation of that is sometimes Lamar will post a bajillion workout clips, and other times he'll go off seasons without doing any of that. But the work that is quiet is also work, and the clips that are coming out of Faalele are great, but I have no doubt that he's been trying to work hard because I think he understands that he's their right guard. He has expectations this season. It's not necessarily a battle to me. This, to me, feels like Faalele being like, all right, it's go time, and I know what's at stake.
Yeah, and let's not sugarcoat things. Let's call a spade a spade. Daniel Faalele was awful last year. He sucked. He was not a good guard for the Baltimore Ravens. He had flashes. He showed flashes of being good, but that floor for him as a player was indeed hit at times. He just looked like he was not made to be a guard in the National Football League. Now, again, we saw flashes. We saw improvements in his game. His play recognition improved drastically, in my opinion. I talked about it on my show, Cheap Plug. There will be a new episode coming out, in a couple of weeks. But, neither here nor there. The point is, Faalele was not a great guard last year for the Ravens. He was, in fact, one of the reasons why the Ravens failed to make the Super Bowl. It's just as simple as that. So for him to take onus of that, very similar to Madubuike, maybe not as drastic because Beeks actually, in my opinion, was one of the better players for the Ravens last year. For him to take onus and know, okay, well, I'm going to be the starting guard here. I don't want to lose my job because there's no way the Ravens enter 2026 with another bad guard if his performance continues to be that way in which it was in 2024. He needs to be better. So it's good to see that, Stanley talks about him being better, taking the steps to get better, taking the offseason very seriously. We're going to need him because the Ravens are not going to win the Super Bowl if the guard play continues the way it was last year. It's just no way. The interior of that line struggled in the Bills game. They were beat up front on both sides of the football last division round of the playoffs. So they need to improve about that part. Faalele is not going anywhere. We all know Harbaugh loves Faalele, Pro Bowl Faalele. So if he wants to earn that moniker, he needs to get good and get good quickly. So I'm very happy to hear that he's taking this seriously because he cannot just rest on the laurels of what Harbaugh said. He was not good last year. He needs to be better. So hopefully he gets there in 2025.
And the thing that I kind of look at, and I'm honestly creating this quote on the fly and trying to be inspirational, so I might just absolutely botch this right now, but I'm going to do it anyway, is you want your players to play to the strengths of your system, not your system play to the strengths of your players in terms of the offensive line. Now, with Lamar Jackson, you and your quarterback, you want to build the system around that player's strength, right? It's not every position that this is true for, but in the offensive line, you want to have your players be able to emulate where your scheme is at its best. And you don't want to have to essentially overload a side for a guy or make special adjustments for a guy. You want it to be a seamless transition. So when you build out your offense around your quarterback, like the Ravens have done with Lamar Jackson and evolved that over the years, offensive line wise, you want to put the best five on the field that work with Lamar's style of play and work with the offensive style of play in general. And for Faalele, obviously we know this offense relies on pulling and getting out into space. And Faalele, we just call it like it is. He has slow foot speed. He wasn't able to get out into space at times. We saw, faster, quicker, whether it be defensive linemen or second level players would scoot right past him. And Faalele, I think, was a major, not the only, because I'm never going to say only, but he was a major reason why the Ravens lost both of their games in weeks 1 and 2 against the Chiefs and the Raiders. It was just that bad. So, yes, he improved at times over the course of the season. It worries me if the foot speed hasn't improved, the athleticism hasn't improved. Is he able to get to the level they need him to be and work within the confines of what they need from him? Or are they going to have to make adjustments to, essentially help Faalele out, which again, help your guys out, like do it, but you don't want to overcommit to it and create weakness in your offense somewhere else. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I don't want to bash Faalele. Like, this isn't all on him. Look, this guy is not built to be a guard. I mean, that's like on the opposite spectrum. It's like putting me at guard at 5'10", 180 pounds. I mean, to have a 6'9", nearly 400-pound guard when you're asking him to pull on a regular basis, it's just, it's tough. So, I mean, he has to do what he has to do to get there. Obviously the coaching staff sees something in him that, sometimes I struggle to see, if I'm being quite honest. But he does have the potential. We talked about the floor being low. The ceiling is through the roof. I don't think there's a offensive lineman in that locker room with a higher ceiling than Faalele. And I think that's what the Ravens are envisioning eventually. And they're willing to take the gamble, because they do have so many skilled position players who are, exceptional, from Zay Flowers down to obviously Lamar Jackson, that they can take this chance to give him a year to get acclimated and to make these changes. Maybe he made those changes in the offseason. You mentioned he got a little bit slimmer. He looked a little slimmer. So we'll see. Maybe, he has another guard somewhere in the past to mimic his game after and get what he needs to do to get going. But there is no way we can go another year with poor guard play in the interior of this line, especially if you have Super Bowl aspiration. And those birds, those green birds in the NFC, have an interior pass rush that is the likes of which we haven't seen in quite some time. Obviously, they lose some edge rusher, sting with the loss of Sweat, but they still on the interior with Jalen Carter. And he is a problem, and you need interior line play to be exceptional. Obviously, the Ravens want to get to the Super Bowl, and to get to the Super Bowl, you still have to go past Chris Jones over there in Kansas City. You still got, Hayward over there in Pittsburgh. TJ Watt sometimes swim over to the inside. If Hendrickson plays, sometimes he could be that guy too. So you need to get better play from your guard play. Hopefully Faalele takes that next step. It looks like he's at least trying his best to get there, and that's really all we can ask for him, considering he's most likely going to be the starting right guard in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and Ronnie Stanley might have actually leaked who the left guard is going to be, although I think everybody already knows who that is, Sam. We talked about it. Andrew Voorhees is probably that guy. I think they have said it without saying it. He was asked about building chemistry with the left guard position, and he said, you have to work a lot of time together. It takes time. It takes hours. He said some other stuff, and then he said, Andrew was a very smart guy. We talk a lot, and I think we're on the same page about a lot of things. So he was not asked about Andrew Voorhees by name, but he said Andrew Voorhees. So that might be where the Ravens are looking at the left guard position. But Sam, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on the way out. Tell people where they can find you and what you're working on is training camp. I'll say it again. Training camp is back.
Training camp is back, and which means Ravens Talk is actually back as well. New episode will be out this week talking about the offseason and training camp and what I'm looking forward to. So you can find me on Ravens Talk Podcast on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Also can find me here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We are here Mondays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Very excited to join myself with Q and Kevin as we go on and talk about all things Ravens as we get ready for this very exciting season that you can so plainly see in my face. Very excited about it. Let's get this party started.
Man, I'm ready. And all the links to Sam's work will be in the description down below, so be sure to check him out and support him. He does great work, as you just heard here on Locked On Ravens today. And also, we have so much content here on Locked On Ravens content, obviously, whether it be the main show here, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Time, with the Squad Show live Mondays and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have a lot of other exciting things planned as well. So that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much for tuning in to the show. We'll be back here tomorrow talking about day one of training camp updates, who performed well at practice, who did not, who are the big storylines, and so much more. So be sure on the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.